Hello, Crystal Palace, and welcome to the Norwood Library Hub's Library Live Lunch. This is a place to share positive and local information and find out about the wonderful community in greater depth and try to keep us all connected during this time. I'm Kat, you met me a few days ago. The lovely Eleanor is volunteering. She's off on a volunteering trip, so me and Rin have covered her spot. I will be joined today by John Pritchard from St John's Upper Norwood. Hi, John.
Hi, nice to see you.
Right, John, do you want to tell us what you do?
Well, yes. So I'm here primarily to talk about the Hive, which is a social drop-in run by the Church St John's. I don't know if you know where St John's is, but it's on the bottom of Sylvan Hill, so on the corner of Sylvan Road and Auckland Road. And we're quite lucky that we have an incredibly oversized building, but a good church hall as well, in which we can do some good social and community-minded activities, amongst which one that we've been running for the last 5 or 6 years now has been something called the Hive, um, which invites and encourages people who are both isolated, lonely, or who suffer with mental health problems into a place of community and encounter and relationships, I think, really, and tries to, can't heal anyone, can we? But we can certainly make the pains and sufferings that they experience because of the difficulties they have in their lives a little less harsh, perhaps.
And
Is that a good
so,
intro?
yeah, it's a great intro. How has, so you're saying this has been going on for 5 to 6 years. How has lockdown affected the format in which the Hive takes place?
Yeah, dramatically, I'm afraid, because of course, paramount is has been the well-being, and so we've not been able to see the users face to face, but we have been able to make and keep contact with them over the phone. Because of course, one of the wonderful things the Hive does is not only feeds, but also helps with some of those sort of really quite complex things that so many people struggle with. About I've just been doing one about 10 minutes ago. Um, Food vouchers, um, benefits, representation, and support already. So we have quite a few users who are in significant amounts of debt, and it's simply just trying to make those conversations with them count, so that they know what they can do to take responsibility, I think, really, for some of those places they find themselves in. So during lockdown, the face-to-face work has had to end immediately, but the conversations and the relationships have continued wonderfully. We've just started doing a takeaway food service now, and what's been so lovely is that, and we're so not a kind of takeaway church, if that makes sense, but what's so lovely is that they've just all come flooding back, really, and we've um, we've made sure that everything is safe for them, and we just give them bundles of cooked food that they can go and have on a Wednesday and take home with them, or they can eat in the grounds. It's been so nice here that they've been able to sit out and enjoy some food that way. So it's changed dramatically, but we haven't given up on. Well, we haven't given up just because it seemed like a bit of hard work to work out what to do, if that makes sense.
Has it been nice to see some of the faces you've seen
Yeah,
before and talk to on the phone? And
yeah. I think I don't know about you, but I certainly think one of the really disappointing things about um, the COVID months has been it's reminded me that sometimes we live too much in a bubble of likeness. And what's so lovely about the Hive, I think, is that that bubble is completely burst open. And so, um, especially these days, it's quite a big thing for people to go into community places, let alone the church. And yet, unless you're sort of like me, or like other people you know that do those sorts of things, what's great about the Hive is that um, that a whole different sort of strata of our local community is able to and feel confident to come out and come into places where, you know, they might have otherwise thought they might not have been welcome, sadly, or where they might not think they belong. And so the wonder of seeing all these people is that you see the most eclectic and diverse group of people who come as they are. And I think most importantly about the Hive, and something the church has got to get used to, is that people are people who do not fit into a box, who do not conform to being like we might have historically thought we'd want them to be. And let's just work with people in that present moment as they are, and see how that works, really. So it's been fun to see them, because you get to see a whole different side of life, really, which I don't want to be hidden away from. And they don't want to be hidden away from us, which is nice. It's
It's
really
definitely brought people together in ways that people wouldn't have expected before, is what I found. And also, sorry, just in terms of, I mean, obviously you're in the church. I think a lot of people, whether it's through the church, have found or are looking for at this time faith, and faith in each other, and faith in their communities. And so being able to access that through you and the work you guys are doing at the Hive, I think that's very important for local people at the moment.
and certainly building community is of paramount importance. And as the Hive, you know, the Hive without the service users is nothing. The church without community is very little. You know, we rely on community. We rely on a sort of an engagement and a relationship with people in order to normalize ourselves in a good way, but also to make sense of what we believe, that we can actually serve people and look out for the common good, really.
What do you think? Because lockdown has had its challenges and it's had its positives. What has been one of the biggest challenges you've had to face during the lockdown?
Oh, I think the biggest challenge is that the vulnerable people in our communities have become more vulnerable, and certainly, um, and certainly, I can pinpoint, and I don't want to be um, political, but I can pinpoint a moment in lockdown where I saw an incredible decline in people's mental well-being because of the national narrative, or the English narrative, perhaps, of what we were being told to do. And so the biggest challenge, I think, was both how to be present to that and to know what it was for what it was, but also how to gently accompany people through that, when we ourselves, I suspect, maybe yourselves or Kat, were struggling a bit with isolation and with being told, no, you don't have freedom or liberty to do what you'd otherwise do. Um, and that was, I think, especially for people who are at the very hardest end of society and community, whose experiences are tough. I think then to have that freedom, that liberty removed from them, I think caused a lot of damage, while trying to keep them safe as well. So the biggest challenge was how to meet that dramatic and widespread change, I think, in people, especially in their mental health and their physical health, of course.
Do you have any advice for people who may
Got tons of advice.
it's in your job. For people who may be finding, because obviously during isolation, you know, you've been removed from people, and then there's a fear factor in it as well, and people might not want to come down on the Wednesday, or they might not want to talk on the phone because anxiety. Do you have any advice for people on what they can do kind of at home with family, or just kind of internally?
I think I think small steps, and certainly you all of us, because I don't think we're just talking about one particular group or another. I think that when we're talking about the response to lockdown and the increase in anxiety and isolation, we're talking about all of our experiences, mine as well. It's been a struggle for me, I think, a bit to to go back into that big sort of arena of people, and to think, well, for a moment it was quite comfortable being locked away, albeit I live in a very fortunate house and garden, but it became a bit idyllic, and amongst all my friendship groups, people liked that for a bit, and the thought of going back out into the world has filled everyone with a bit of sort of horror, really, about what they might find and how they might be, or how they might be seen. Um, so, so I think that I'd suggest small steps, but I think most importantly, just try and make a key relationship with somebody that can support you. And at the beginning of lockdown, it was really interesting. I had lots of people from the community here saying to me, "What can I do to support the church?" And that was, with a great respect to them, that was the sort of red herring, because that's just displacing where the real need is. The real need is your neighbour. And I think the most important thing that anyone can do is look to your neighbour and expect a neighbour to be able to be kind to you and to support you if you can explain yourself sufficiently to be understood by them. And for you to do likewise, really. I think this is how we build community. We look to those things immediately around us and see how they're doing. And if people are anxious and if they're struggling, then try and build a sort of some sort of rapport with a neighbour. And in London, I'm afraid to say, that's almost like sort of the last thing anyone wants to do, but it's the first thing in my experience that allows for those small steps to be taken, because they get your context, they get your area, they get what hopefully a bit of where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
That's my advice.
When we talk about neighbours, I found one of the best things that happened to me in lockdown was I became part of a WhatsApp group, which is for the free streets around me. And now, it was initially to see who needed help, who was isolating, if we could do any shopping, pick him things up. But now it's just like, it's a community. And before, like, I've talked to some people who I live around, but not to this level. And now I'm walking down the street and it's, you're talking to people and
all of a sudden somebody might know your name. It's easy for me because I land in a community like this, and immediately lots of people know who I am. But that's so atypical. That's not most people's experience at all. You land in a community and you can live your entire life, some people, in an area without really being known because of how you are, how you relate, or how you come and go. And certainly I think one of the things we must look to, and certainly the point of trying to publicise the reputation of the hive, is to say, like everything really, our capacity is amazing if we want it to be. We serve about 45 people weekly at the moment. Well, that's, if you think about, there are 15,000 people that live around me, I think. And you just think that of all those people who are isolated or struggling, who don't have somebody to speak out for them or look out for them, we want, we don't want to call it, we don't want to be the only place, but certainly a place that's in people's minds that they can refer neighbours and friends to, or people that they see and just say, well, there might just be an opening here for them to go and have something on a Wednesday at 1 o'clock at the hall here at St. John's. And yes, I think we could at least double, triple the people that we serve, and still that would just be a fraction of the people that need those sort of resources in their community. That felt a bit garbled, sorry.
So if do you have enough volunteers at the moment? Do you have enough people working at the hive? If you were to say suddenly get 150 people coming, are you able to feed them all?
Well, there's a couple of things there. We have the most amazing manager called Danny Simpson, who is the manager of the Hive, and he encourages volunteers. And we have people that don't come to church who come and volunteer, but also people from the community here in the church who do volunteer. We can always do with more volunteers, absolutely, because of course it's one thing serving people food, and the thing they really want though is conversation, is interaction, and food just doesn't do that. If anything, food just fills that gap, doesn't it? But so certainly, if people want to volunteer, we'd open our arms. We'd have to make sure they were trained and that they were safeguarding checked and all that, because we are dealing with primarily vulnerable people. So the people have to be open for that. Part of the wonder about this fundraising initiative from the Crystal Palace Festival is that, of course, I don't particularly want us to be charging for people to have to come and eat. The church is by no means rich. It is in terms of people, but we're very fortunate to have capacity and space. So just paying for the basics of the food is the sort of basic sort of economy there already. But food is actually very cheap. Cooking it is expensive because it requires staff, but they're volunteers. And feeding is pretty easy, isn't it? You know, giving out portions, that sort of stuff. So yes, we could upscale, no problem at all. But we'd have to pay for the basics, of course.
And so one of the reasons we have you on here today is because Crystal Palace Festival is starting this weekend, and St John's Upper Norwood is one of the charity partners. So
Yeah.
they will be receiving some of the funds that the festival can raise.
Yeah.
So whoever's watching, make sure you get involved.
Yeah, and it's my responsibility to make sure that money goes straight back into supporting the people in this community. You know, people will give me money for the church building and for keeping the lights on from the congregation, and the congregation financially support the Hive as well. But do give so that we can develop and expand what we do, really, because as I say, you know, 40 people is a drop in the ocean when it comes to people that could benefit from some sort of fellowship and support. And but I don't know if you mind me saying, Kat, and I hope there aren't any other clergy watching. This isn't about conversion or anything like that. This is simply about remembering that the human being, in his or her, whether they are identifying by those pronouns or not, is of immense value and wonder, and can break so quickly. And somebody's got to be there to serve that person when they think it's not true, but they think the rest of the world is against them. And this is about, without being corny, loving just for love's sake, really, where there is nothing's expected in return. And if anything, it's probably doing us a favor, not because it makes us feel good about ourselves, but it does help us understand our vocation, which is to love creation, to love those who think they're unlovable. And I think we've all been there, haven't we? But, you know, certainly the Hive is to extend that hand of friendship, not because we want anything in return, but because we think it's important to be part of people's lives when perhaps other people aren't.
I think that it may have become, like, historically, that the church could be a scary place to some people, or just religion in general can be a scary place to people.
It terrifies me every day. No, I know.
But really, the intention behind, you know, faith and religion or spirituality and the basis of it is it's about love, and it's about sharing that and making the world a better place. So,
and yeah. I was out in town last night, and I passed by a church that I've known a long time ago, and it was open, but the doors were shut, but closed too, if that makes sense. And it was, and even for me, who, you know, I'm pretty well on the inside, if that makes sense. Even for me, it was a really daunting thing to have to open that door. It was really difficult, and I genuinely hope that what this conversation might do is just tell people, please, just try pushing that door. Don't be afraid to push that door. Really, it is open, and it's not scary.
And you're there for them when
Yeah,
it opens.
yeah. And yeah, absolutely.
So in the Hive's current format, you know, you've got Wednesdays going on. You're calling people. You're, you know, things have kind of gone online. You've got your Facebook, which is St
Yep.
John's Upper Norwood.
Yep.
May I add?
Well done.
How do you see all of this moving forward in terms of like a collection of that? You know, it's not just everything's changed. How do you see the online and the in life kind of working together for people? Does that make sense?
Not really. The I think I know what you mean. I think we can run things in parallel. So certainly there'll be people who'll be still isolating, and we'll be able to maintain those connections with them virtually via phone calls or emails. And I was really surprised by the sheer number of people who've been open as a takeaway for 2 weeks now. And I've been really surprised by the people who've come back to that, because it's been really, really encouraging. And I think into the future, we need to simply develop the opportunity to break down as many barriers as possible, so that people can come for what they want within the sphere of what we offer. Most importantly, they've got to be safe, and they've got to feel that they're coming to a place that's been thought about and that is safe for them to be in. And we try and sort of develop that as best we can, really, listening to their needs and responding to that appropriately. I think, you know, as I say, I was just doing a food voucher for the food bank for somebody, and that's not straightforward, because of course that still involves people having to travel to destinations to pick up food if they're already vulnerable. We do have a food bank collection point here as well at St John's, and the church is open every day. So if people want to drop in food for that as well, that would be really helpful. We don't use that for the Hive; that goes to the food bank. But certainly, it's never beyond the need, if people do need food locally, that we've always got something in store that we can give to them if they're in, you know, immediate trouble. I don't remember the last time I went hungry, you see, and I know that's pretty obvious, but most people do, and we've got to be mindful that sometimes the choices people make about feeding themselves or children, or feeding a spouse over themselves or whatever, are real choices that people are making on a daily basis in this community. And, you know, we can pour billions into furloughing schemes, that sort of stuff. We need to pour some money into the groundworks and grassroots levels, supporting basic neighbourhoods and people in those neighbourhoods.
I feel like a lot of this support that may have come has been quite top down. You know, it's like put money
Yeah.
in, whereas yeah, you're right. It should be from the ground up, because what are people going to do with that money if like they
you know, and a benefit system that is I'm sure very good when it works, when it's efficient, but mostly in my experience here isn't very good and isn't efficient and doesn't deliver for people without putting them into severe debt first, and so on, so you know, so on and so forth.
Yeah, people who may be on benefits, they still have to access food banks, and it's not enough. And I know that a food bank in Sydenham got broken into, the Kelvin Grove one, which became a food bank during the lockdown to offset the one in Forest Hill, because the sheer amount of donations that were coming in. And now, like, everything got taken. Now they're looking to restock everything. The knock-on effect of that one located incident.
Yeah.
A lot of lives impacted. So
it's amazing, isn't it? Really. It's amazing. I always remember as a child, you know, going with my parents to do the Christmas shop, and they had one of these long estate cortinas, I think, and we just finished all of the Christmas shopping. I think we'd just gone to get the turkey, and it was late one evening. And we got back to the car, and the car had been broken into, and everything had gone. So you know, you can imagine. And my mother, interestingly, said, "Well, I hope they needed it more than we did. Let's go and start again." And I think, you know, I think it's scandalous when people are taking just for the sheer gratuity of depriving others. But let's hope that if people take, that they actually take because they need. Because there's enough of us to replenish those things if we just all did something. And my parents were, you know, they certainly weren't rich, but they certainly had more money than most people to be able to go and start the shopping all over again.
I feel like that's a great mindset to have. If you can, then, you know, sometimes you just kind of have to let things be.
Yeah, so. And my experience of life is that the story is always much more complicated than the present actions. People do those crazy things, but because far back in who they are, there's a real brokenness and a lostness that causes them to do X, Y, or Z. Or in the present moment, there's something that's an overwhelming pressure to get them to act in a particular way. And I think the really important thing about the hive, and I'm not trying to at all link these two conversations, but is that we're all broken at a particular level in our understanding of ourselves, I think, because we all have experience, which is complicated mostly, but we live mostly in denial of. But the one thing about the hive users is that they come with that sort of understanding of their brokenness and of their troubles present into that moment. They're happy to talk about the things that most of the world don't talk about. They're happy to discuss the things they're not proud about, that I might, about myself, want to hide, you know. And it's wonderful to live in relationship with people who tell you the truth about themselves and don't feel the need to dress it up in dog collars or in whatever.
Yeah, everyone has a story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's important that story is heard and taken seriously, I think. And the hive tries to do that with varying degrees of success. You know, I'm not saying the hive is the solution to the world problems, but it's certainly trying to be a part of something good in this community.
Well, I think that will be a good place to finish. Thank you, John.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much, Kat. It's lovely to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you. If anyone wants to go and find out about the hive and anything more about what's going on, visit their Facebook, look at their Twitter, and make sure that you support Crystal Palace Festival this weekend, because some of the money raised will be supporting the hive and all of the great work that they do.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.